Welcome to our Saturday simulcast. I'm joined by Tom Dienhart and Brian Neubert after Purdue's. What was the score? 17-9 victory over Northwestern. It was not one of those games that you're going to etch this one in memory if you're a Purdue fan, but it was a win nonetheless. And we kind of held off a little bit because we wanted to see what happened in the Iowa-Minnesota game. Of course, Iowa wins that game in relatively dramatic fashion. Pretty wild day in the Big Ten. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, the Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro, all that they do for us. And they have a busy hotel tonight after probably people warming up after that frigid event today in Ross-Ade Stadium. And Tom, I'll start with you. We'll hit about what happened in the Purdue game today, and then we'll talk about the ramifications of what may be next now that Iowa's in pretty good shape, it appears. But Purdue, not great, but they did get the job done. A couple crucial injuries, obviously, it appears that Gus Hardwick and Devin Mockabee may be out for a while. We don't know about, at least I don't know about that, but talk about that and what was said in post-game and kind of your impressions of what we saw.
Yeah, wasn't pretty, right? Winning ugly, to use a dated reference for the 1983 Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, there you go.
And Ron Kittle. But yeah, they found a way, right, against a compromised Northwestern team, starting a sophomore walk-on quarterback that was really limited in the passing game. And time and again, the defense, turned back that Northwestern offense and gave the Purdue offense a chance to do something with the ball. And Purdue couldn't get much traction. And, in the postgame, Jeff Brom talked a lot about the weather. Once again, the conditions were not ideal for throwing the football. Aiden O'Connell's numbers reflect that, 16 to 25. Under 200 yards passing for the second time in 3 games. And just no real big plays either, right, guys? I thought he was off the mark. I'd like to get your opinions too, but he seemed to be off the mark on a number of passes as well. So he just really hasn't been in sync. I know the weather's been bad. Again, for the last 3 games, it hasn't helped his cause, but still, he really just has not been his usual self that we were used to, especially last season. So, but still, they found a way to run the football, right? We know in these weather conditions, you got to be able to run the football. And Jeff Brom showed that willingness last week at Illinois, and he did it once again Saturday. Mockabee left after the first series, but Dylan Downing and Kobe Lewis really stepped up and gave this offense some teeth with running the football. So that was positive. And guys, at the very end, too, the defense made a play to sort of seal the win. That Jack Sullivan sack, I thought, was big. And it was always good to see your defense step up and make a big play late for you to help you seal a victory.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, this game would have been different, much different had, in my view, of Jalen Graham's pick 6. I understand that the rules, and I still am not a big fan of that call, but I understand that the call was what it was. But your take on this, because it wasn't a pretty performance by Purdue, and Aiden O'Connell was just average at best. Yes, they did run the ball when they had to, but boy, they missed Devin Maccabees. I mean, the guy ran at about a 3.0 yard per clip. Got the job done. I agree with you, Tom. But anyway, what's your take on all this, Brian?
Yeah, I'll start with the Jalen Graham penalty. It's a dumb rule, but it's one that it can erase the play. I'm not saying that
it's just silly.
I'm not saying that excessive celebration or taunting, whatever it might be, should be a penalty, but it shouldn't erase the play. It should be tacked on. I know that changed not all that long ago. I found that out today. I didn't know that right away. But I can't understand that. Nor do I have any reason to believe that this had to be a front burner issue, because this happens so often. How often, do players are they in position to celebrate 30 yards before they've scored? I can think of 2 times in 20 years covering Purdue, one of which was obviously Taylor Stubblefield in 2004. This was one of the stupidest, in terms of the actual what happened, celebration penalties ever against Purdue. One of them being the one where Ralph Bolden celebrated with Purdue Pete for 2 seconds and got flagged. But that didn't take a touchdown off the board, But part of this, too, is like everybody after the game said the field was slick, right? And you got Jalen Graham high-stepping 30 yards on a slick field with holding the football like this, there's some judgment issues there, too. Not just the celebration, but also the score the touchdown, then celebrate, kind of thing. I mean, it's we don't have to litigate a young person making a mistake here necessarily, but clearly it was a mistake. But that mistake fit into this broader theme with Purdue of just finding ways to keep these games more stressful than they need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what Purdue just, we've been talking about a Big Ten West championship now for like 2 months before they have actually played like a team, worthy of being called a champion. I mean, they keep, there were no turnovers today, yet still, Purdue misses just enough throws, makes just enough mistakes, squanders just enough scoring opportunities for them to, have to sweat out a win over a terrible team playing a third string walk-on quarterback that shouldn't be able to score. I know Devin Mockabee was out. I know Gus Hartwig was out, but for most of the game. But that stuff matters. And I'm not saying football's easy. I'm not saying style points matter. I'm just saying that Purdue just makes things so hard on Purdue sometimes that I think this was more of the same today. I mean, they were just asking for trouble. They were just asking for something crazy to happen. Something crazy did happen, but they're just asking for something else crazy to happen there in that fourth quarter where you conceivably could have lost a game with everything in the world to play for today to a team that had lost 9 games in a row coming in and has no pulse. Because you just can't string together enough mistake-free football to where things go as smoothly as you'd like them to go. So I don't know. I just kind of went off on a tangent there. I'm currently being roasted on Twitter for saying that it might not be the worst thing in the world for Purdue to share the Big Ten title and let Ohio State be Iowa's problem. I mean, I don't see what you get out of going to – nothing about what Purdue has done this season has said they can go and they can go beat Ohio State and they can play in the Rose Bowl. So sorry for pointing that out, guys.
Yeah, I do think, and one point of clarification, if the internet is correct, we did look it up. That rule changed in 2010, which it still is, but it's been the fact that it is a dead ball penalty or whatever they call it. But right, Taylor Stubblefield was penalized in the Notre Dame game, right?
Yeah, but it didn't negate the play. It was
right, and that's when the rule changed in 2010.
Yeah.
And but if the source is correct, but yes, it seems right, and I do. I'm kind of with you on the Purdue thing. I mean, and again, as crazy as this Big Ten has been, and today was, I know there's no chance Nebraska is going to beat Iowa, but I'll say it. Who knows? Nebraska almost beat Wisconsin today, so I suppose stranger things have happened. But Purdue, Tom, had best to have its head screwed on. IU gets outgained by 260 yards today and wins. Throws only 7 passes in the game and wins. So Purdue has to have its head screwed on next Saturday when they take on Indiana.
Yeah, I think IU had lost 7 games in a row, Alan.
Yeah.
They started 3-0, lost 7 in a row, and they go to East Lansing to win, right? They have the big rally, and they're going to be full of some confidence now, right? And we all know they'll be motivated to beat Purdue, their rival, and keep Purdue from at least having a share of the Big Ten West Championship, maybe taking away a berth to the Big Ten Championship game for Purdue. So, again, motivation will not be an issue for the Hoosiers. And like you talked about, Al, now they're going to have some confidence, too, getting that big road win up in East Lansing. So, yeah, I guess the soap opera continues, this Big Ten West chase. And I would count out Nebraska. Casey Thompson played today. They came darn close to beating Wisconsin. So as long as he's a quarterback, I think Nebraska's going to have at least a puncher's chance, maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too deep into Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, but you got to tip your hat to the Hawkeyes, right? They find a way, and I give them a lot of credit for being resourceful. The defensive turnovers they generate, the Jack Campbell pick was a touchdown. Should have been a touchdown. But still, the fumble late by Ibrahim, and then the interception, and then kicking the field goal late. I mean, Minnesota missed a 34-yard field goal. So, Iowa always seems to win these 13-10 games. It's kind of uncanny, isn't it? I don't think it's an accident. So, I think they're the best team in the Big Ten West, if you're really honest with yourself, aren't they?
At least against head-to-head against Purdue, it's hard to argue, right?
I mean, come on. I mean, I know
Yeah.
their defense has been showing. I mean, their offense has been showing a little bit more pulse here. So I don't want to turn this into a beauty pageant right now, but back to Nebraska, I do think they have a shot. But for Purdue, Alan, you're right. I think it's going to be a tough game in Bloomington for the Boilermakers to win. It'll be interesting to see what the crowd looks like, won't it, on Thanksgiving weekend down there in Bloomington. So again, it's a game that's still going to have a whole heck of a lot on the line for the Boilermakers.
Lots of tickets left, as I understand. They're not even all that expensive on StubHub. As I looked after the game, we got a couple kids coming into town that might want to go, and we're thinking about that. But yeah, Minnesota runs for 300 yards and loses that game, if you can believe that. And from that standpoint, all right, Brian, let's talk a little. Aiden O'Connell. We've talked about what a great career the guy has had, but has not been. He just not been perfect by any stretch. And that offense, maybe, you've watched a lot of football in your life. Both of you have. Has it been a case of people are figuring, that Purdue has a hard time getting separation with receivers? Is that as much a function of what we're seeing here? I don't know. What is slowing Purdue's offense down in a game that, like you said, they didn't turn the ball over? And yet they couldn't. And I know it was cold. I know all that. And it was windy and whatever. But what say you on that?
Well, I think that a couple of things go into this. One, it is November in the Big Ten. That's part of it. I think Purdue doesn't have enough playmakers at wide receiver relative to where it wants to be. Charlie Jones has had a great year, but I don't know if they have a consistent anyone else who is a reliable playmaker here. And three, I think people are just more inclined defensively nowadays. Just make damn sure you keep the ball in front of you. And that's something Jeff Brahms had to adjust to a little bit because he's a very vertical passing minded coach. They've hit some deep balls over the top this year, but they haven't done it in a while.
No,
right?
Yeah.
I guess they made the one play at Illinois, I guess you'd call behind the defense, but it's been tough sledding throwing the ball over people's heads. And that's kind of, I've always said that I think Purdue football practices the deep ball probably more than any school in the country. I've only attended Purdue practices, so it's hard for me to say that, but I can't imagine other people working on it as much as Purdue does. So I think that's part of it. But also, I think that he's just been a little bit off this year. I think he's just not been as accurate as he's needed to be all the time. I think acclimating to a new set of receivers around him maybe has a little bit something to do with that. Maybe the receivers not being David Bell, Milton Wright, and whoever else has a lot to do with that. Jackson Anthrop. I think that's probably a bigger part of this than anybody would like to admit. But I also think he's just missed some throws, just like any quarterback's gonna. I thought there were 3 throws today that might have made this game a lot smoother from a Purdue perspective than it might have been. Now, one of them, it was a touchdown ball to TJ Sheffield. I don't want to put it on O'Connell because I can't say for absolute certain the receiver did what the receiver was needed to do on that play, if I'm remembering things correctly. But I just think, this is kind of a season where last year I think there was personnel around Aiden O'Connell that sometimes made Aiden O'Connell look like a little bit better than he really was. This was a year where Aiden O'Connell kind of had to make the people around him look a little bit better than what they actually are. And I just don't know if that's happened on a consistent basis. That's not necessarily Aiden O'Connell's fault. He certainly did his part by getting Charlie Jones here. But I just think there's so much responsibility on him too, in terms of, I shouldn't say that because they've been able to run the ball effectively for a good portion of the season. But I just think everything I just meandered about for the last 8 minutes, however long this answer's gone, is just part of the reason. I think a lot goes into it.
Yeah. Devin Mockabee, Tom, again, we don't know anything more about his concussion or whatever the situation is there. But those things, if it is in fact those things don't always come back in a week. We just don't know. I do think that you missed him a good deal. But again, in a rivalry game, I thought that the move to Kaltenberger at center. He did okay, but Purdue only ran the ball averaged 1.8 yards per carry in the second half. So they really struggled. Whether that was on him, again, I have no clue, but it wasn't totally on him, obviously. But is this you're going to have to find a way to in the bucket game, and yet is this also a case, Tom, where when things look bleak with Purdue's offense, all of a sudden they do something, and maybe that'll be the case against Indiana next week? And Indiana's obviously not very good defensively.
Yeah, I think your last comment may be most spot on, Alan. Indiana's defense is not exactly a steel curtain, so you'd think that would help a Purdue offense that if they are going to struggle without Gus Hartwig and Devin Mockabee, maybe those struggles won't be amplified going against Indiana's defense. We shall see. The second half, you talked about the numbers there, Alan. Purdue only had 34 yards in the third quarter.
Yeah.
They had 100 yards total in the second half. Of course, just 3 points. So they really struggled after intermission. And they really struggled for the entire game, honestly, on offense. And I think Brian outlined some of the issues with playmakers and the inability to consistently get separation. And, it seems like every other game, Payne Durham's a big factor, isn't it? Seems like I know Payne Durham caught a touchdown pass today, but he caught 2 passes total, and it just seemed like he was, by and large, a non-factor. Maybe you credit Northwestern for that, I guess, and what they were doing defensively. But seems like if he's involved, good things usually happen for Purdue, and we saw those struggles today. So, yeah, in the Mockabee situation, yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I think they can get by with who they've got back there now. Dylan Downing and Kobe Lewis are sort of lunch pail kind of guys, muckers, if you will. They can run Tyrone Tracy on those jet sweeps or on a quick pitch reverse. We saw that today as well. So I think they can manufacture enough against a defense like IU's to keep that offense churning. So it's going to be an interesting chess match, guys, and it'll be fascinating to see what the early betting line is when those odds come out on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to guess 8 or 9 points Purdue, maybe.
Purdue's given 8, you think?
Yeah, I think Purdue will be over a touchdown favorite, but I don't know. Whenever I do, I'm always about a touchdown short on those. All right, one of the most asked questions in Lafayette that has nothing to do with this has just been talk. There's been a lot of talk about Purdue and Louisville and what would happen. Again, all conjecture. There's nothing to point that anything is going to happen. Louisville won its 7th game this year by beating North Carolina State. Now is 7-4. There's no indication that they're going to make a change this year. No indication that Jeff Brom is going to go anywhere. But I don't know what else to ask except Brian. I'll throw it at you, Brian. I mean. What else? What? Yeah, what? I mean, but it's obviously it's the question I get asked everywhere I go. Like, is he leaving? Is he leaving? We don't, there's nothing that tells us that that's happening at all. But things happen at the end of the season. College football is in a crazy place where you never know what's going to happen. But I don't sense that this is having any impact on this football team at all. But I mean, you don't hear anybody else talking about it in any way, shape, or form. I don't know what I'm asking, Brian, but give us your wisdom on that thought process.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think it was a hot seat year for Scott Satterfield, and I think if they were going to move on Scott Satterfield, they were coming back after Jeff Brom, and I think it was hard for Jeff Brom to turn it down in the first place.
Sure,
and it'd be a lot easier to say yes this time, and I think ultimately it's reasonable to presume that ultimately one of the things he's wanted out of his career was for both himself and his family was to be back at Louisville. But Scott Satterfield's, saved his ass here the last couple weeks. Pardon my language.
No, that's okay.
I don't want to.
May have to change the thing on YouTube now if you.
I don't want to offend your delicate sensibilities, but I mean the Wake Forest win, the NC State win. I mean they've reversed course now. I like to refer to Louisville basketball as college basketball's top-rated reality show because there's just always something going on there. There's always some sort of weird undercurrent, weird controversy, whatever it might be. Never underestimate the power of the booster who just doesn't like the coach.
Yeah.
But at this point, it'd be really hard from an optics perspective, from any perspective, to to fire Scott Satterfield. Now, the question also is, I know he pissed off a lot of people in Louisville by looking at the South Carolina job, or was it South Carolina? Yeah, South Carolina.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he talked to him or whatever. He might have gotten sideways a little bit with some of those, in particularly influential horse and booze folks, as we like to call them. So maybe Scott Satterfield goes and looks for another job. Who knows? I mean, it's one of the most important things a coach can do from a career perspective is knowing when to get out. And if he wins 8-9 games at Louisville this year, I don't know what's going to be open. I have no idea what's going to be open, actually. Maybe he sees the writing on the wall at Louisville and says, I got to get out while the getting's good here. You never know. But as of right now, I have a really hard time seeing Louisville make a move on Scott Satterfield. That being said, Louisville is one of those places where the decisions aren't always made by the people who are necessarily qualified to make the decisions. So, who knows?
I know you're going to send me a Christmas card for throwing that question.
Thank you.
No, all right. I will add one. I will add one thing, so I can at least. I agree with you. I think that it seems. I use the Paul Christ example of anything can happen if they can get rid of Paul Christ, but. And I know that they're a mutually exclusive situation, and there are 20,000 empty seats a game at Louisville. But I agree with you, Brian. It doesn't make any sense from that standpoint.
But what makes sense in college football anyway?
That's it. That's my point. And I think it. And I think we're just remiss if we've been. I can't tell you how many people are asking me this everywhere I go. And so I thought, well, now's a good time to at least bring it up. Tom, do you have anything else you'd like to add to the fray there?
Are you the only one that gets asked that question?
No, I think you guys all get asked that more than I'm just verbalizing it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you guys are spot on. I talked to a prominent media member down there a couple of weeks or so ago. Who's was about as dialed in as anybody, and he didn't think there was anything that was already a done deal, or whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
But I think Brian summed it up. Just when none of this makes sense, it'll happen. It'll happen. I guess I like the idea of maybe Satterfield and looking around to get out while the getting's good, but I just wonder who wants him.
Yeah,
is he really a hot? Even if he's 7, is he that hot of a commodity to have a job upgrade? It's not like he's going 10-2 or something.
Well, I think it's different.
You're gonna go South Florida.
Yeah.
South Florida.
Well, who are we talking about here?
Satterfield.
Oh, Satterfield. Okay. Well, I don't know. Who knows what jobs are going to be open?
Yeah, that's but who's going to want them?
Yeah, I don't know, but I also think they have a big game for their fan base this week when they play the old University of Kentucky.
Yeah,
and that's a game who's been struggling, and that also could fuel the fire. We'll focus on Purdue and Indiana in the bucket game and stick to that. But I do think it's obviously people are talking about it, but whether that means anything, we don't know. All right. So,
real quick, too, I talked to Jerry Palm in the press box before the game. Jerry's talking throughout the entire game, but we talked
literally the whole game.
And everybody,
yes, give us some bowl clarification, please.
We thought whoever, first of all, Big Ten's probably going to get 3 teams. I guess in the bigger bowls, the playoff.
Day 6.
Maybe 2 playoff teams: Michigan, Ohio State. Then the keys to get Penn State into a New Year's Six bowl. Most people think that's probably going to happen. They're going to be 10-2 here, guys.
Yeah,
I think they play Michigan State in the finale.
Yeah,
so they'll probably go to the Cotton Bowl. Play like UCF, but UCF got beat today. But anyway, if that happens, and of course everybody in the Big Ten gets pushed up, right? And your Florida Bowls are probably down to Illinois, Iowa, and Purdue for those 2 spots. And he thought whoever got the Big Ten title game was probably going to get a Florida Bowl bid, right?
Sure.
Well, probably pencil in Iowa for one of those spots. That probably leaves you with Purdue versus Illinois. For the second Florida spot, you would think, right?
Yeah.
So that was sort of what he was thinking as well. And if not Florida, again, we've talked about this before. We talked about Carolina and New York City being the next 2 likely landing spots. Nashville's a no-go for obvious reasons. This is not the year the Big Ten sends a team to Las Vegas, so forget about that. So the third option would be Phoenix. So that's sort of probably what you're looking at least a couple of weeks out from these bowl selections. Good chance for Florida. If not Florida, Carolina, New York, not those two spots, and probably Phoenix.
Yeah, I think I have to think that, they always talk about, and like you've said many times before, Tom, it doesn't matter. That record does not matter. And obviously Iowa has been to Florida several times, but they obviously also, if they get to the Big Ten championship game, they are as our.
They're still going to travel, Alan.
Yeah, and the internet, our knuckleheads don't like us to say that they travel. Purdue would travel well to Florida also, just because it hasn't been there since
Illinois.
2006.
Illinois two's bowl start, right? But I'll say this, that was not an impressive crowd in Champaign.
Yeah, I think Purdue's more attractive than Illinois. I to a bowl. Yeah, I really do. I believe that.
But Illinois is still kind of a sexy story. The up and comer, with the star running back, and hasn't had a lot of success. So there's a lot to sell for Illinois too, even though they haven't had great home crowds.
Yeah, they came within an eyelash of beating Michigan today. So, yeah. Brian, any thoughts?
I don't think Illinois is any good. I think that
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I think that both the old Wolverines and the Buckeyes were looking forward to their little foray next weekend.
Yes, they were
today, and thus made things a little bit more dicier than on themselves than they needed to. But no, I don't think Illinois is any good. I know that doesn't matter. I know it's all about ticket sales. That's fine, but how does Illinois sell tickets? Do they sell tickets?
No, they don't. I mean, they don't. But they haven't been to a bowl game in a long time. So
so it's probably going to come down to Illinois and Purdue to see who goes to.
I think your analysis is
at the
correct,
same stage of Purdue's development as a program. Remember, they were getting passed over every year.
Yeah.
By people like the Wisconsins and the Iowas. And you wonder if Illinois is in that same position now, where maybe Purdue gets a bump over them. Because I'm seeing you shake your head.
Illinois is the flagship university of a massive state with a lot of people. Yeah. And I think that's got appeal, I would think.
But don't also look at Wisconsin. Crazy as it sounds, they beat Minnesota next week. And not, again, the wins don't matter, but that would at least put them at 7-5. So who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point, Alan.
Why do they even have rules anymore? Why don't the bowls take whoever they want? Like if somebody wants Northwestern, just take them. Who cares? Like nothing matters anymore but money. So just take them.
I said let everybody schedule a 13th game. It's so stupid.
Because as we learned a long time ago, the bowl is going to get who the bowl wants one way or another. They're going to, if they can't have them, they're going to change the rule and they're going to get them. That's why, Purdue back in the late 90s could get passed over by 2 spots so that Iowa could come to the Outback Bowl or whatever it was. Yeah, they're going to get what they want anyway, and all anyone wants is money. So just do away with all the rules.
Well, the thing about it is that we make a big deal. We hem and we haw and we gnash our teeth about these bowl games, act like they're a big deal, and then we're going to get there, guys, and then all the good players aren't going to play them.
Yeah, that's what worries you too. I don't even want to get. We're going to avoid that. Who will play for Purdue? We'll talk about that.
I don't know if Purdue's got any. I don't know if Purdue's got any guys like that.
I think the only guy who maybe that guy. I can see a guy like Jalen Graham now playing. Maybe
that's conceivable. But I always thought that's more of like a first rounder, second rounder, maybe third rounder type of thing. When you start to get into that 4, 5, 6, 7 range, you're getting awful presumptuous here, guys.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell needs
more. Why would you
your
play
agent's an idiot.
O'Connell? Why would you play me for Aiden O'Connell? Why even play?
Well, Aiden O'Connell came back to play another year of college football, so I assume he didn't have to come back this year. So
I understand that, but he's played 12 games. I think that's
enough. But I do think for Aiden, especially the way his season has ended in the second half,
he could use nothing.
Yeah, but he could use a good boost going into training.
I think that's overrated. That is so overrated.
But
guys, the NFL's not going to sit there and go, "Oh my God, he had a bad Outback Bowl. We're not picking him."
He is.
I think he might help himself.
The hay's in the barn, man.
He's played like 30 college games and he's like 25 years old. So I think the NFL knows about him what they're going to need to know about him.
That's probably true.
I don't think the bowl game is going to hurt him or help him one way or another.
It's not.
Charlie Jones is a guy he's
not going to play.
At some point, he's going to get drafted. Now, whether he's not a first or second rounder probably, but I think he's got special teams on his side. I think he's a guy who's going to get an opportunity. He's going to get drafted, I think.
He's so banged up, he wouldn't play.
But that's what you deal with. It's the David Bell factor last year. David Bell dealt with so many injuries that I think it really made sense for David Bell to sit that game out. As much as people wanted to see that David Bell played one more game, that guy had so many little nagging injuries last year, his whole career, even in high school. I think it made sense for him to sit out. You wonder if Charlie Jones, hey, I've got all these things I'm playing through here. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
I know,
it's fun.
It is the Ahead of Themselves podcast today, Zoom or Saturday simulcast on a couple of different items. We hope we didn't upset anybody here by ruining your weekend by bringing up those topics, but we will see what happens. All right, we're gonna put this to a close, and we'll be back next week. I don't know how we're gonna work it because Brian will be out in Portland. Tom and I will be in Bloomington in one form or another, but we'll figure out something to talk post bucket game, etc. And that will be our Saturday simulcast.
When was the last bucket game I went to?
Well, you really at the overtime, triple overtime, or double overtime game in 2019?
No, I was in Destin for that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
2018 was in Bloomington. It's when
I haven't been to Bloomington for football in years.
I don't know. You have to tell me.
I wasn't. Yeah, I know that I've been down there a couple times, but I think my last one was 16, just because we do that our post game show down there because the radio crew gets all screwed up because they're out covering basketball. So somebody's going to show up this week, and we'll be there to cover it. So, all right, a reminder to you. Then there's been another asked question about us. You can still become a member of GoldandBlack.com for just $1 US dollar. And we would love to have you do that. Thousands have done it so far. We appreciate that. That offer is not going to go on forever. So we would like you to consider joining us. And once that offer is over, it's over. But we hope that you'll consider doing that. We also want to thank the Union Club Hotel. We also want to wish you all happy Thanksgiving. And there'll be a lot of things on the site this week with respect to basketball. Brian will be spending his Thanksgiving night in Portland watching Purdue play and West Virginia play. That game's around 10 o'clock Eastern. That will be an interesting one. Maybe Purdue will play. If they can get through West Virginia, they'll get a chance at Gonzaga in game 2. We'll see. And then obviously Tom and we'll have a lot of football as we lead into the Old Oak and Bucket game next Saturday. Game time to be announced. By the time you listen to this, you may already know it. I don't know. But last week they were late in announcing it, it seemed to me, but it probably will know by mid-morning Sunday, if not before then. So have a great week, everybody. Thank the Union Club Hotel, and we'll see you next week on our Saturday simulcast.
Mm-hmm.